Hello and welcome to Unprofessional Engineering. My name is James.
And you got Luke.
Luke, today we're going to be doing another How It's Made episode, Christmas edition. Wow.
Yeah.
You always start out so
No.
stuff.
So sometimes I'm excited about what we do. Sometimes it's not as excited. I think that I picked the wrong things to look into and like history and how it's made.
That's on you.
I got some bad ones. And
So let's lead off with a good one, which is one that I've done. How about that?
everything you do is good.
That's
so,
right.
Shoot.
The first Christmas-related How It's Made that we're going to be looking at is the candy cane. It's pretty cool. Don't me. You haven't even looked at it.
I haven't looked. So the thing is, I hate candy. Do you like candy canes? I despise them. Oh, you don't even
The
like
production
them?
process is really cool. The taste is
You are the worst.
mint.
So I like candy canes if they're not the peppermint kind. I like
You're a
I
heathen,
like
yes.
the unusual flavor ones.
Yeah, you're a weirdo.
Okay.
You hate Christmas and Santa.
Mm,
Moving on, the history of the candy cane. Are
Shoot.
you interested?
yeah, I'm severely interested.
Severely. It isn't really certain how it all came about, like most of these things. But
Yeah.
here's a couple tidbits that might point us in the right direction. So it originated in Germany about 250 years ago.
Everything started in Germany.
I know, like me, everything good. And it was just a straight white stick of sugar, which, I guess that's good. Sugar's cool. But why was it made? The people in the choir or whatever it was were afraid that kids couldn't sit through a Christmas nativity service and keep their yaps closed. So they gave them this candy to kind of like bribe them.
Kids do have a hard time keeping their yaps closed sometimes.
They're really the worst at that. They're almost as bad as me. It was decided to use the J shape, though, to make it look like a shepherd's crook, to remind them that shepherds visited baby Jesus at the first Christmas. Now, I would have thought it was a J for Jesus, but, who am I?
I would have thought it was just like, so it was just more complicated and lasted longer.
They might choke on it.
Yeah.
So around 1900, the flavor was added, as well as the red stripe that we all know and love. Not Red Stripe the beer, which is delicious in Jamaica, but the Red Stripe, the actual color.
Okay.
In America, the introduction of the Christmas candy canes is often traced back to August Imgard, a German immigrant who's credited with introducing the Christmas tree in Ohio in 1847.
Nice.
Because go Ohio, our neighbor. The National Confectioners Association, which is apparently a thing,
Apparently.
says that this guy decorated a small blue spruce with paper ornaments and candy canes.
I don't know if it's like one of those old wives' tales that you
Probably.
hear, where like the Christmas tree was like a pagan ritual.
Yeah, that could be.
That, has nothing to do with Christmas. And here, you're telling me in the U.S. it started with some cat that like showed up in Ohio and threw some candy canes on a tree?
That's what I'm telling you. Yeah.
Okay.
So around 1920, Bob McCormick from Georgia started making these for his friends, and they became really popular because they were sugar. Why wouldn't they be? So enough that he made a company called Bob's Candies. He was a very creative man with his naming. His brother-in-law, Greg Harding Keller, invented the Keller machine that added the curve automatically. So this guy was actually a dual threat because he was also a priest. So this was like right up his alley, priest/inventor. So Bob's Candies was bought in 2005 by Farley and Sathers, now Ferrera Candy, but still makes candy canes today.
Is this Ferrera like the...
I don't know, like the chocolate?
Like the chocolate?
I don't know. I think it might be something else.
Okay.
We'll see.
Okay.
How it's made. Are you interested?
I am really interested.
I thought the history was kind of cool.
I like the history, I think, more than anything, because I think people generally know how stuff is made.
How the candy canes are made is very interesting.
Shoot.
All
Let's
right.
hear it.
So candy makers wearing sweet hairnets, hopefully, start by cooking sugar and water and corn syrup. I mean, you don't want your hair in your candy
That's
cane.
the worst.
And corn syrup. They turn it into this malleable substance, and I'm going to refer to it as kind of hard silly putty. Okay? It doesn't taste like silly putty, which is no good, but it's kind of has that consistency if you look at it. Next, you mix up some starch and peppermint flavor, or if you're like Luke and you like something not pepperminty and you hate Santa, you use that flavor. Well, spearmint's close enough. They're like the same thing.
Totally different.
Anyways, you mix these together and the flavor binds to the starch, so a little chemistry going on, which it's then dumped into the silly putty that we talked about, and then you mix it up and you throw it in this machine with 2 big shovels. They actually look like big snow shovels that keep scraping it up and picking it up. And then there's a big plunger that smashes down on it. So it's basically just working it all together to get all that flavor. It's kneading it, distributing that flavor, which is cool. So after it's all smashed and shoveled together, you pick it up again and drop it on another machine with 2 big pullers that rotate the silly putty around a central pole. And so as it's wrapping it around this pole, it's adding air into the mixture. And as it aerates it, the candy turns white. And so once it's nice and white, you know it's good to go. What do? You dump it on yet another machine. So there's not a whole lot of people involved in this process.
At least the way they do it nowadays, I imagine.
Well, of course. I mean, back in the day, they didn't have machines. That was well observed, Luke.
Yeah.
Well done.
Thank you.
So you dump it on yet another machine, and you just roll this lump of silly putty into this big fat log. So it's basically 2 rollers moving, and it forms it into this 16-inch, give or take, diameter like cutout, and it forms this big
way bigger
log.
than a normal one.
It is. Like, that would be a lot of candy cane to eat. So all during this process, it heats the stuff so it keeps it pliable, right? So you have this big fat log. Now it's time to add the red stripe to it. So you chop off a piece of this log and slap it on a table, and then you get out a big red piece of candy as well. So all this time, you weren't just making white candy. You also make another batch of red candy.
Gotcha.
And you make it long and thin. So, like, if you lick a candy cane, usually the red wears off and you're just left with white.
Yeah, it's not in the center.
So you wrap this red around the outside of it, just one stripe of it. And then you now are left with this 100-pound log of candy that you throw on another machine called a batch roller that reduces the diameter of the log down to candy cane size, so the size that we think about. So it just keeps rolling it and making it thinner and thinner. And the whole time it's being rolled, which is pretty cool, a flamethrower is blasting the candy to keep it pliable.
From getting too hard.
Yeah. So the candy cane rolls through some wheels to thin it a little bit more, and it goes to a machine that has these knives that go pow, 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 and just chop it into candy cane size. And then, almost last but not least, it's taken to packaging where they're all wrapped in cellophane as straight sticks.
Oh, yeah,
and they're blasted with hot air.
Right.
They're blasted with hot air to seal the plastic. And at this point, the canes are bent into the shape, which I think is interesting. But if you ever look at a candy cane, they have the crinkles on the inside, and on the outside of the bend, it's all really tight all the time.
That makes sense.
I've never realized that was how it goes. Then they're automatically stuck into a box, usually about a dozen. And off they go for me to be eating them.
So if you had to guess, how long is the whole process? I'm not sure if it's said in your research.
It didn't say, but I mean
20 minutes,
probably,
an hour?
Well, I mean,
to like
for
do
one
a
batch, I don't know. You're probably doing multiple batches at a time. How about one of yours? Let's hear it.
Okay, I'm going to go with Jingle Bells.
Let's hear it. Yeah, I love
or
Jingle Bells.
Sleigh Bells. So
Sleigh Bells ring.
So there's no like... Wow, that was pretty good.
Thanks.
I didn't realize that you were a singer.
I get confused for Bing Crosby a lot.
Speaking of Bing
My
Crosby,
sweet voice.
Did you ever see that Funny or Die episode where John C. Reilly and Will Ferrell recreate the Bing Crosby and David Bowie playing the piano?
No.
If you get a chance, Google it. It's hilarious.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm doing Jingle Bells, and this isn't Jingle Bells the song. This is Jingle Bells, the physical little jingle bell itself.
Yes.
So these were originally called sleigh bells, and no real specific date was able to be found of when these things originated, but they were originally cast bells. So they would actually cast a physical bell. So nowadays they're a little bit easier to make, but these were cast bells, and they would tie these to horses or teams of horses. And the reason they did this was, and the reason it's a sleigh bell is, think about a horse on a sleigh on snow. There's like zero noise. So apparently peoples were getting run over quite a bit by the horses and the sleighs because it was quiet. So they put these bells on. And what they would do is they would take these bells and they would put like multiple bells like all along the horse's bridle, and this would make a noise when they were running, a noise when they were stopping, a noise when they were starting, and it was really a safety feature to make sure people weren't getting run over and killed by sleighs with horses.
Oh, well, that's useful.
Yeah, so and that then obviously went to things like reindeer, and next thing you know, Santa Claus has them on his reindeer, and it's just, one thing after another. Next thing you know, there's jingle bells literally everywhere. So
literally
everywhere, I think is the right
literally.
word. So so how they're made? So nowadays they are made with sheet metal. So what they do, if you've ever seen one, it's a spherical ball. Typically has a little indent in it for hooking it on. So, but the way they start, it's a flat piece of sheet metal, any thickness depending on the size of the bell. And interestingly, these are actually used in, or they were used as a musical instrument back in the day. So the way like people play bells at like church, they actually had like jingle bells that were all different sizes that had different volumes or sounds they would make. But that's whenever they were cast. Now it's a super flat piece of sheet metal. It gets hit with a super heavy duty punch. Like they make literally the one factory, I think they said in one day they make 250,000 jingle bells. Like
who's buying all of these? Nobody wants to hear that.
But if you think about it, you go to like Pat Catan's or you go to like one of these craft stores at Christmas. Every decoration at Christmas has a jingle bell on it. So one factory can make 250,000 in a day. So again, big, huge piece of sheet metal. There is a giant hydraulic press, and it has like almost like a clover leaf shape if you think about what a flat jingle bell would look like. So all of these individual pieces are punched. The blanks drop out. The rest of the sheet metal is reused or scrapped. And then what they do is these blanks get loaded into this kind of little conveyor system, and before they get formed into the ball shape, they have to drop the jingle part of the bell inside the center. And usually that's like a ball bearing. Sometimes it's a piece of glass. Sometimes it's just a piece of metal. So they drop that in. And once that's dropped in, they can form like 250 of these at one time. So imagine a giant plate where...
At one time.
That's
cool.
Now, granted, it all depends on the size. So if it's a big jingle bell, probably not as many. If it's a small jingle bell, they can. The jingle gets dropped in, they get formed, and then they kind of make their way the rest of the way. Now, could you imagine being like the guy that works at a jingle bell factory?
The noise.
Oh my goodness. Could you imagine that? That would be like it's
like the Grinch.
It would probably be worse than working at like one of those factories that makes like paint and like I would just think the noise would just drive you crazy.
It would drive you nuts. You'd hate Christmas.
All you hear. So but yeah, so that's jingle bells. Pretty interesting. I guess I never thought that like before sheet metal and presses, they would cast these as individual, like a sand casting.
I think those
to
are
make
pretty
a bell.
valuable. If you
they're
came
really
across
valuable.
The old ones,
yeah, but they don't. But those are very rarely made anymore.
Well, sure.
So that's jingle bells.
Very cool. I think that's more interesting than you gave it credit for.
Yeah, maybe it is. Now that I'm saying it out loud.
Yeah. All right. Before we move on, let's take a break for a word from our sponsor.
I'm assuming our sponsor is either Kris Kringle, a.k.a. the Santas, because we're kind of doing his thing right now, or I don't know, the Fruitcake Producers of America?
That could be. I thought maybe Pat Catan's with all their jingle bells. But actually, we do not have a sponsor. I know.
You know
I
what?
thought for the holiday
season,
someone would have ponied up some cash.
Really?
All right. Well, we do have some shout-outs. So Andrew L. wrote in, and he's looking to turn his CAD hobby into a career. Maybe check out our episode with Neil Cross about how that goes for him.
Mm-hmm.
But if anyone's looking to hire out some CAD work, hit us up at unprofessionalengineering@gmail.com, and we will send it over to Andrew. Maria B. wrote back to us. If you remember, she wrote us a sweet poem back a couple weeks ago. And let us know that, a lot of things, actually. But she gave us some topics, and she stood up for old Neil deGrasse Tyson, saying that 9 isn't an odd age to get into physics and the sciences, because she was kind of into that sort of stuff as well at 9.
When did you get interested in, like, sciencey stuff?
I am still not interested in it, so I don't know what she's talking about. Nadine L. listened to us, quote, nonstop for 3 days. That is 72 hours of listening to us. But I think maybe that was a figure of speech.
That would be hearing your voice for 72 hours. I call
that heaven.
I could murder you after that, I think.
Let's not talk about violence. And last, borntoengineer.com named us, Unprofessional Engineering, as a top engineering podcast. go check out their page for all of your STEM needs and engineering news. If you haven't checked it out, borntoengineer.com. Very cool. A lot of cool STEM stuff for your kids to work with, and a lot of just like hot news that's going on.
I think if we got all of our listeners to kind of share our stuff and like and do all those sorts of things, subscribe, we could potentially be the biggest engineering podcast in Western Pennsylvania.
I think we could be. That's a good goal for us to have.
Just saying.
In at least southwestern Pennsylvania.
Yeah, Allegheny County specifically.
Yeah, exactly. Good goals.
So make sure you subscribe. We will send you stickers. Make sure you like us, follow us on unprofessionalengineering.com. What's our Gmail address? You think I'd know it by now.
Unprofessionalengineering@gmail.com.
Oh.
Email us there. We'll send you some stickers. Subscribe, write us a review. We're up to 69 reviews on iTunes, plus more other places.
Sweet.
Yeah. All right, moving on. Next thing for me, the last one I actually researched, is the nutcracker.
See, I wanted this one.
I know.
And you stole it?
I came up with it.
I don't think you did, but that's all right.
I said, how about nutcrackers? And you're like, oh, good idea.
How about nutcrackers?
Yeah, so we're talking about the little guys that you pull the lever and crack the nuts, not the like boring like metal ones that work better. We want the fun,
we're talking about
ones.
the play, the Nutcracker with the Nutcracker King and the rats.
In the rats, yeah. So if you go to ehow.com, you can learn how to make a nutcracker of your own, because who wouldn't want to go do that instead of spending $10 on one? So a little bit of history about this, and this is thanks to slate.com for all this great information. The earliest written reference to the tool, and this is the old smashy hand one, was the 14th century, and they pop up as very minor footnotes throughout European history, according to Robert Mills, who wrote Nutcrackers and the tools. The tools alluded to in the Canterbury Tales as well, which is a book I've never read. King Henry VIII gave a pair of nutcrackers to Anne Boleyn. And we know how things ended.
Didn't he chop her head off or something?
You know, I don't like talking about violence, Luke. That is an amazing part of history, though, if you ever look into that stuff. Have you ever watched The Tudors?
No. I don't have TV.
Oh, that's right. I could probably hook you up with some HBO Go for that.
You did, but then I'd lost it.
You're the worst.
I am.
So German woodworkers in, Erzberg region turned to, so in the 17th century in the Erzberg region, began carving the earliest versions of the distinctive soldier dolls that we know. So basically what we all think of.
Yeah.
These nutcrackers were made in workshop alongside carved toys and puzzles at the time. And they weren't specifically Christmas themed, but they were commonly given as a gift. So I don't know when they really switched over to being primarily Christmas, but I think because they were kind of in the toys and gift area, they kind of just made their way over there. So the dolls symbolize good luck in German tradition. Yet another German thing, right? Yeah. One popular origin myth, I thought this was interesting, was that a wealthy but, quote, lonely farmer who found the process of cracking nuts to be detrimental to his productivity. I don't know how many nuts he was cracking.
Yeah.
Which is funny, though. The Germans are also worried about efficiency in their folklore, because why wouldn't they be offered a reward to whoever could come up with the best nut cracking solution? And so the villagers showed up from all areas, like carpenters tried to saw them open, soldiers tried shooting them, which doesn't seem real realistic.
Pew, pew!
Pew, pew! But the puppet maker won the day by building a strong-jawed, levered-mouthed doll, and this is where they came from. Do you believe that?
I don't, but that's all right. It sounds good.
The Nutcracker got its fame with the musical. Is it? No, it's a ballet, actually.
It's a ballet.
Ugh.
My daughter was in it a few years ago.
How was that?
It was all right.
First performed in 1892. What do you think about that?
Wow. That seems like a long time ago.
Yeah, that was a long time ago. The war also played an important role in introducing the Nutcracker to America, because GIs in West Germany would begin purchasing the figures to send home as Christmas gifts.
Oh,
so I'm going to skip the rest of the war stuff, but it was not that interesting.
So we actually collect them here in our household.
I have a small collection.
We have probably. We usually get one or two before Christmas every year, and then after Christmas, we stop at all the home stores and get them for like a tenth of
Yeah,
the
like
price. So
$2.
I'm guessing we probably have 30 of them,
Wow.
something like that. We
You have
got
like
we got
an
little
army.
ones, we got big ones.
Do you have medium-sized ones?
No, we just go with like little ones, and then we got ones that are like the old-fashioned GI Joe height,
Okay.
like a foot tall.
Cool. So how it's made?
My guess is it's a piece of wood that they decorate and paint.
Yeah. So fun fact, nutcrackers are typically made out of linden wood because it's lightweight and easy to carve. Did you know that?
I did not.
Yeah, exactly. Now shut it. Wow, that was mean. I'm sorry.
Wow.
And so close to the holidays.
I know.
So for a real high quality German nutcracker, here's how it's done.
Okay.
Not like maybe one that's less high quality. So to make the body, they take an octagonal piece of wood and chop it into like torso sized. And then do you know how many sides are octagonal?
8, right?
Good job. Unless you
Octa.
count the top and bottom, then it's 10 technically, I
Okay.
guess. So anyways, these pieces are automatically fed into a lathe, and they round them out and then form the basic shape of a body, and then it's sanded down to make sure that the stain that's applied is then taken evenly through this piece of wood. So 3 at a time, the bodies are placed in a router, and a notch is cut into them where the lever is going to go for the mouth control, to actually smash the nuts. And it's put into then they're put into a drilling machine, and all of the holes that are needed are drilled in at the same time.
That's pretty
Pew, pew,
cool.
pew. Yeah, it is. So the head and the arms and the base, all of those things making drill noises like pew. And then the body is stained and left to dry. At least 2 layers of stain are put
Okay.
on it. A lathe is used to create the head in much of the same way, and workers manually attach a nose to it. So if your nutcracker has a nose, some of them don't. So it's another separate piece of wood that they glue on there. And then the eyes are cut out with a lathe, and the nose and cheeks are painted nice and rosy, and the eyes and eyebrows are hand painted on the face. And then they usually use a tin iris that's glued onto the eye to make it look like they have real eyeballs. The head is then screwed into the body, and a piece of rabbit fur is attached for hair, and a belt and buckle are put on. And a piece of rabbit fur is also attached as a beard to hide the notch in the front of the soldier or whatever they're creating, so that you don't see the smasher and the hole in his body, because that's disturbing. So the arms and base are made pretty much in the same way, but these ones are glued into place, as well as a very fancy looking hat and whatever drums or whatever else he's holding. So these parts are usually attached with dowel rods, and a large rod runs through the middle of this where the lever rotates about so that you can then smash it. So it has to be strong enough that it can withstand the force of, crushing the nuts.
Okay.
Fair enough. So there are also screw nutcrackers. Have you seen those?
I
They
haven't.
screw from the bottom, and then the pressure then smashes the nut that way.
Oh.
I feel like that's cheating. I have one of those.
Have you ever
but
been to the town in Michigan called Frankenmuth?
I haven't.
So
Sounds great.
Frankenmuth is a Christmas town all year round, which is, I think that would be weird to live in a Christmas town that's a Christmas town all year. But we drove through there one time, and we were visiting West Michigan. You can only guess what for. And they had a guy there that was actually hand carving nutcrackers. They were crazy expensive. I think he was
bet.
carving them, and I think his wife was painting them, and then they were selling them at like a little booth. But pretty neat little town if you're ever in Michigan and you feel like doing Christmas in July or any other time of the year. So
If you're ever in Leavenworth, Washington,
is that the same
the
kind of thing?
state, it has for $5 for adults, $2 for youth, or free to children. They have a Nutcracker museum with
Ooh.
over 4,000 nutcrackers on display.
A little more than I got.
Yeah, so that's all I have. I have a few more fun facts, but they're really not that fun. So let's move on to your next topic.
Okay, I'm going to speed it up here a little bit because I got 2 more I want
Ooh,
to do, and
I
you
love
probably
it.
got at least one. So my first one is, and we can do 2 if you want because I'll make it quick. The first one is fruitcake. So yes or no to fruitcake?
I've never had it.
So that's a no, I'm guessing.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
I
so,
mean, everybody's just bad-mouthed it so much that I've never tried.
So fruitcake, and when I say fruitcake, I'm using the general term fruitcake. So this is that super dense
Yeah,
stuff.
looks so gross.
It's the panettone that's Italian. That's the kind of lighter, fluffier, taller style of fruitcake. But basically, this is fruitcake and or bread that is typically it's made with bread, flour. It typically has has dried or candied fruit in it. A lot of times they're soaked with alcohol. I'm sure you would like that.
Maybe.
But the earliest recipes, and again, there's no really specific date, go all the way back to ancient Roman times. And basically, they would throw in things like pomegranate seeds, pine nuts, raisins, and they would basically make this super dense cake. And back then, it was used predominantly for food that could last a long time.
Okay.
So as soon as you add a lot of sugar and a lot of alcohol to something, it can be preserved. And there's actually some cases, fun fact, of fruitcakes that are like 25, 35. I read one the other day. It was a 125-year-old fruitcake that you could technically still eat, which sounds pretty disgusting.
Yeah. I don't eat like 2-day-old ones. So.
Yeah. So, but fruitcake then got super popular again. Basically, the Germans invented everything related towards holidays and or Christmas. Their cake is called Stollen fruitcake. I don't know. It's or Stollen, or I'm not sure how it's
Stollen.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Stollen.
Okay.
I'm
Yeah,
pretty
go
sure
with
that.
Stollen.
Yeah, we'll go with Stollen fruitcake. So it became super popular in Germany. But interestingly, this is another fun fact. Pope Innocent the VIII, what is that? The eighth granted full use of butter because apparently during the holidays you're supposed to be fasting and observing Lent and not indulging in things like butter. You couldn't use butter all during that season. So this particular pope actually granted the use of butter in something actually known as the butter letter in 1490, allowing the Germans to use milk and butter in their fruitcakes.
Fun fact about your pope friend. Did you know that he died on the year that Christopher Columbus sailed the ocean blue?
I think I did know that for some reason.
Yeah, interesting.
So fruitcake is wildly popular. Now, I have had homemade fruitcake that is really good. The problem, I think, that most people associate is this is fruitcake that you buy at, like, Kohl's at the checkout. You know, there's a box there. It's fruitcake that was mass-produced. But
you don't buy your cake that way, so why would you buy fruitcake that way, right?
I don't know. I'm guessing it's just so every year someone gets us a fruitcake, or we go to a party at Christmas. I'm sure you do too. And there's a fruitcake on the table. No one ever eats it, and it just gets thrown out.
I might try it this year.
I saw some statistic that said something upwards of 98% of all purchased fruitcakes go into the garbage.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Could you imagine all that money you spend on a fruitcake? So that's fruitcakes, kind of interesting. The way they're made, I think you kind of get it. You bake a cake, you throw some dried fruit in it. At a mass scale, they just do a lot of this. So
that's impressive.
We can save the how it's made for the fruitcakes. That's pretty basic.
You bake a cake.
Can we do the next one?
I figure like the process, the fruit making process or chopping, and like it's kind of weird. That might be something interesting.
Yeah, I'm sure that's all automated. Like for these companies that are making like Panettone, the stuff that you see literally at every single store right now, I'm sure they have a giant mass food production facility, and all this fruit is dried and candied in a huge mass environment. So
before you do your last one fun fact for you. It's possible that poinsettias get the bummest rap of all in the plant world.
Aren't they poisonous?
And that's because keeping this plant out of reach of your pets to avoid stomach being upset is a good idea, but according to the ASPCA, you don't need to get rid of them in fear that it's fatal to your pets. So
it's not fatal, but they get sick?
They might have an upset tummy.
Oh, okay.
They might puke a little.
Okay.
But it won't kill your pet. But I always thought it would. So we don't have them.
Okay.
All right, so moving on to your last one. What do you got for us?
Do you want to do that, or are we going to do my rant?
Oh, my goodness, I forgot about your rant.
Yeah, I'll do the rant, and then I'll do my last one. So my rant is, I just recently got my daughter an Apple Watch with cellular, so we could kind of let her do some different calling and different things. And my rant is, why is adding a phone and a line and a watch, and Christmas season's coming up, everybody's going to be doing this. It is so confusing to just go from one phone to another phone, or to add a line, and especially if it's an Apple product, you have to have an iTunes account and login. It's exceptionally confusing.
We tend to yell at Apple a lot.
Yeah,
Yet we use their devices.
For as good as their devices are, and I love them. I use my phone every day. I actually looked at the screen time thing that it keeps track of, and it's pretty stupid how much time I spend on my phone. But the process of getting to that, the setup, the configuring, it is so confusing. And I was talking to a person who uses an Android. Basically, you plug an Android into your computer and it works. and you want to transfer contacts, you just transfer them.
Room for improvement.
Yeah, I guess. That's my rant. It's a short one, but Christmas
like
season's coming up. A lot of people are going to be buying Apple products. Just take your time. Don't mess it up like I do, or else you got to start over again twice.
At least you admit your mistake.
Yeah, and I felt like the old guy. I went to the Verizon store, and I felt like the old guy.
Yeah, they had to tell you how to do it.
Yeah.
Some like 19-year-old.
Okay, my last one. Did you have any more? Or are you
No,
done?
I'm good.
Okay, my last one, and this one is probably the one I was most excited about because I've actually made this one before, and this is eggnog. Again, yes or no on
I've
the
made
eggnogs?
it. You dump out the eggnog, you dump in some rum, and you made it. Done.
Get rid of the.
You just dump rum into your mouth.
Okay, so eggnog, if you
I'll
don't
drink
know,
it.
if you don't know what it is a rich, chilled, sweetened, dairy-based beverage.
Wow.
It's traditionally made with milk, cream, sugar, whipped egg whites, and egg yolks. I don't do the whites when I've made it before.
You don't.
And typically, some sort of alcohol is added, usually like a rum is added to kind of spice it up a little bit. So no one really knows when eggnog kind of
There's
occurred.
a lot of mystery around these things.
I think because these are traditional holiday type things, I think everybody kind of claims them, so kind of finding that first one's a little difficult. But of course, this started in Europe. Supposedly, this was sometime in the medieval times, and this thing was called posset.
Oh, yeah, posset.
Posset?
Sure. Yeah, you nailed it.
Posset. Posset. I'm not sure how they did it. But this was made with hot milk that was curdled, so you were looking for old milk, and they would add beer or wine to it and throw in spices. So this was kind of like a winter beverage.
That sounds terrible.
That sounds.
Let's have some curdled milk with beer. Mmm.
Put in some nutmeg and you're good to go. So nowadays, obviously, eggnog is synonymous with Christmas and the holidays, and typically you're going to go to the store, you're going to buy this. There's, in most cases, very little real egg and virtually no nog in it. It's just some kind of flavoring added to usually some half and half and whole milk.
So you've said you've made it. Do you have a recipe for me?
I do have a. You were looking at my
perfect.
screen, dog.
Oh, we were supposed to play that off like I wasn't.
Oh, sorry.
Like I was really looking for one.
totally forgot. So, so this is the best recipe ever. I've done this before. I don't have the exact proportions because that's how I cook since I'm a pro. So basically, you're going to take milk, and this has to be whole milk. Those of you that want to do this with skim or 2%, just don't bother making it.
Okay.
So
It is so creamy. Why would you?
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So you need whole milk, whole cloves, like the actual cloves you buy, like that you shove in a ham. You need whole cloves, vanilla, preferably a vanilla bean if you can get it, like a whole vanilla bean, cinnamon, and you're gonna throw all this stuff in a saucepan. You're gonna let this simmer over medium to high heat until it comes to a boil. You're going to do this for about 5 minutes, and that's going to get all those flavors all kind of mixed together in the milk, right? You don't want to let this thing scald. Then what you do, and this is where everybody freaks out, you take eggs, and I only do egg yolks. I don't do the whites. So you take a handful of egg yolks. Here's a tip with an egg yolk. You crack eggs in a bowl. You take an empty water bottle, squeeze it, put it on top of the egg yolk, let it go. It sucks up just the egg yolk to separate it.
I did not know that.
It's like the
That's an
best. It's the
interesting tip.
best egg separator ever. Okay, so you're gonna take egg yolks and sugar. You're gonna whisk those up and get them nice and fluffy. Then you're gonna slowly add that into the warm, not boiling or super hot, because you don't want the eggs to cook. Otherwise, you end up with scrambled eggs. So you're gonna add this to it nice and slow. Whisk, whisk, whisk. Always moving, low heat. Get it in there, and you're gonna raise the temperature enough, but not boil it. And you're going to let it cool. You could serve it warm if you want to serve it warm. And if you like to add booze to it, you could add some booze to it.
Wow. Well, thank you for that.
Yeah, it's really, really good.
I feel like I'm going to try that.
So everybody used to make eggnog, and back in, this was I forget what it was, 74, 75, at an old age home. About 45 people got sick from homemade eggnog, and they all got the salmonellas, and like 4 people died.
Ooh,
and then that was
Merry
like,
Christmas to
basically nobody made homemade eggnog after that. I read something. It was right in the mid 70s when that happened. It was.
I might make some.
It was one of the biggest. I'm definitely
I'm
going to
not
make
scared.
some. And if you're heating it, I think you're okay.
Do it right. You'll be fine. All right. Well, I feel like I'm going to just have so much to talk about around the Christmas tree
know.
this year. I'm going to sound so smart.
And I think all of our listeners will too. They can talk about eggnog.
You're
They can talk about
welcome,
nutcrackers.
listeners.
They can talk about jingle bells, fruitcake.
Talk about how much goes into a candy cane
I know.
to make it.
It's going to be amazing for them.
I feel like we really just gave them a great present.
We did.
All right.
Merry
Well, until
Christmas.
next time.
See you.